Hi, I'm Amy from Select Travel Holidays, home of Cruise Select. Hope you're enjoying our virtual cruise festival so far, and I hope you're inspired by our Expedition Cruise presentation. Not to worry if you haven't watched it yet, because you can watch it any time in your own leisure. But now I'm joined by our Expedition Cruise specialists, who we met previously. We saw how, although they all offer amazing adventures across the seven seas, they each offer something a little unique that sets them apart. So we've had a look at their differences, but now it's time for them to come together for a discussion on what they think is special about expedition cruising, what myths they'd like to bust, as well as answering some of your questions. So let's take a look at this panel. Hi, I'm Amy from Select Travel Holidays, home of Cruise Select, and thank you for joining us with our expedition panel. We've got a host of fabulous experts here from a range of different expedition cruise lines. I hope you've enjoyed their presentations. There have been some really inspirational things that I know I've enjoyed, and I'm sure you have as well. So we have Lucy from Aurora Expeditions.
Good morning.
And we have Luke from Silversea.
Hi.
And we have Natalie from Hurtigruten. And Matt from Intrepid, and
Hi guys.
Jay from Aurora. So
welcome everyone.
Thank you. So we've all seen your amazing presentations. We've given like a little bit of an insight into each of your different cruise lines, what you will do a little bit differently, and I think we've seen that there's quite a bit of diversity in expedition cruising. Now, what I loved was, well, lots of things really, but I love that quote from Greg Mortimer about adventure being the first step outside the comfort zone, that tingling feeling you get. And I think we can all agree that expedition cruising does deliver something different, something that you wouldn't expect on a mainstream or traditional cruise. So what do you think are the key ingredients of an expedition cruise, and what would you say is perhaps the biggest difference between expedition and non-expedition cruising? Perhaps start with you, Jay, as a quote.
Yeah, fantastic. Greg's a real inspiration of mine, so that's really nice that you picked up on that. Yeah, there's so many ingredients I think that goes into an expedition cruise. First up, I guess the most obvious thing are the destinations themselves, being able to get completely off the grid, well and truly away from any sign of civilization in many cases. Wonderful places like Antarctica, South Georgia, Northwest Passage. So that's really going to be your first ingredient, is taking somewhere very extreme and remote to explore. The next thing I suppose would be the real educational aspect of expedition cruising. It's so important that when guests are on these voyages that they get this real education and they learn from the guides on board. We'll have world-class expedition leaders. They're glaciologists, marine biologists, polar historians, ornithologists. We have adventure guides, and their combined knowledge really brings everything to life, and I think just gives guests that deeper understanding and connection with these environments. And for me, that's so important, and I think everyone will agree that the expedition team are really the superstars of this whole operation. Ingredient number 3 would probably be something like spontaneity. There are no fixed itineraries in the expedition cruise world. We look at the local weather, the wildlife, the sea, the ice conditions, and we can decide where to go and explore and where to take guests based on what's happening. If we can see in the distance that there are humpback whale breaching, we can get the zodiacs out and go take a closer look. So that's what makes it really exciting. The nature provides the script that we all abide by, and I think that's really quite special. And finally, and possibly one of the most important things, is all of us have a commitment to sustainability. Being respectful and responsible to nature. We want our guests to become ambassadors for these regions when they come home, which will ensure their future preservation and protection, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that commitment I think shone through all of your presentations, because I mean, what's the point of taking your guests to these beautiful environments and then destroying it? You know, then you wouldn't be able to take other future guests there, and you know, we do need to take care of the world. And so yeah, that's an excellent point, thank you. Does anyone else have any other ingredients they'd like to add to the expedition cake?
I think I think Jay, really hit the nail on the head there, and it's all about the destination, and I think the authenticity that comes with an expedition cruise. So, I think one of the questions you asked as well was the difference between an expedition cruise and potentially a mainstream cruise. The expedition cruise is all about the destination and all about the experience, which I think Jay summed up perfectly. And it's less focused on the ship. The ships that we use, depending, obviously different operators with different ships, but they're comfortable. You're going to have a comfortable stay. You're not in the 1800s where you've got a wooden ship trying to get across the Drapes Passage. You're going to have a comfortable journey, but it's less about the actual ship and it's more about the destination. And I think on a kind of a lot of mainstream cruises where they're a lot bigger, and you've got a lot more facilities and theme parks and go-karting and casinos and all that type of thing, that adds to the experience on a kind of mainstream cruise. But the expedition is all about the what's out there, the destination, the scenery, the wildlife, and as Jay mentioned, getting that knowledge from your fantastic expedition team.
Excellent, thank you guys. And
one thing, sorry Amy, I'll just add something to that, because I know they touched on Matt just touched on the ships, but I think it's important to emphasize these ships are so much smaller than the bigger ocean ships, so accessibility is much easier. They can access places that the bigger ships can't go to. So I think that's quite an important thing to highlight, is how much smaller they are than the ocean ships.
Yeah, and not just the size, it's also some of the technology they have on board, like your toucan bow, for example, and I think a lot of expedition ships will have dynamic positioning and all that sort of stuff, so they can withstand some choppy conditions, putting it one way, and also do it in a way that's respectful to the environment which they're cruising through. So I think, like you say, the ships are very physically different as well. So I mean, a lot of us have been cruising for a long time now, and we've been aware of the general misconceptions cruising will face. I know, I think in my beginner's guide to cruising, I tend to, go through some of those. But what misconceptions do you think there might be for expedition cruising in particular?
I personally think the first, the number one question I always get asked is, do you have to be super fit to go on an expedition cruise? And the answer to that is no, you don't. There's absolutely something for everyone to experience on expedition cruises. Talking from Hurtigruten's perspective, you can go on hikes, you can get on the rig boats, but on the flip side, there's gentle walks to go on, visits to local towns, and lectures in our science centre. So you can take the adventure at your own pace, really, on board these expedition cruises.
Excellent, thanks. Is that something else you'd all agree with, or have you had any other misconceptions? I think
I have to agree with Natalie. That's one thing quite often I get asked is how difficult is it to do an expedition, and whether people are capable of doing it. We always say generally it's not a fact, but we say to our guests, if you can climb 10 steps unassisted, you're fit enough to do an expedition with us. So as long as you've got the right attitude and you're willing to give it a go, the expedition team on board will absolutely make it happen for you. So yeah, I absolutely agree with what Natalie said there. But the other misconception I would like to address, which I might be contradicting what Matt said a little bit here, is a lot of our guests being at Silversea, a lot of guests think that they have to compromise on their comforts and luxuries when going on an expedition cruise with us, which for us isn't the case. We are an all-suite accommodation. We still have the guest to crew ratios 1-to-1, so our guests are still spoilt rotten and looked after every step of the way. And we do daft things like take them out champagne and chocolates on the Zodiac, so whilst they're watching the whales breach, they can sit there and enjoy a glass of champagne. So one misconception. Yeah, I think, to be fair, and to mirror what Matt said, is the ships are still very, very comfortable. I think a lot of people think they have to go on old Russian research vessels in order to get to these destinations, and they don't realise that a lot of us have built our ships bespoke to these destinations, and they're designed perfectly for our guests and the destination alike.
Yeah, but I mean, so I don't think it's entirely a contradiction to what Matt said, because the focus is definitely on I think for all of you, comfort. Your guests will all be comfortable. They're not in wooden bunk beds or something with, you know, but you know, they've all got comfortable places to, like, you know, rest their head at night. They've got you know, good food throughout the day, but obviously Silversea does have that more elevated thing. But that's actually, I think, always the joy of cruising, is the sheer diversity in it. And what's great with all you guys is that you each have something unique to offer, and it's really great that you're all here. You know, you're joining together to tell, you know, my clients about how brilliant expedition cruising is, but also that there is an expedition cruise for them. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about you know, cruising in general, but also what we've got here today. And but I think that is a misconception that some people might, you know, have, that that they might be worried that they can't enjoy the usual luxuries that they would have on, say, a Silversea normally. So you've got that, but you've also got, I mean, so Matt, you generally come from a non-cruising background of Intrepid, and you're no stranger to having misconceptions about adventure travel. So I guess, do you find that a lot of your, you know, your usual customers who go on your Intrepid tours, do they have misconceptions about you know, the adventure cruising you offer?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, sometimes when you use the word cruise, some people will think, you know, they'll just think of mainstream cruising straight away. And I think what the great thing about cruising is that there's lots of different ships for absolutely everybody, lots of different styles of cruising, and expedition cruising, it offers customers an authentic experience, but also a fantastic, you know, comfortable stay. And I agree with Luke as well. You know, with the ships, there's obviously lots of different standards. Silverseas are a high-end luxury. Intrepid ship, we're a mid-range ship. It's a true expedition vessel. But on our ship, we still have a pool. We have a sauna. You know, we have yoga and wellness activities included. So, you know, so there is still definitely lots of elements of comfort. I suppose it's more you know, you wouldn't have a casino on board an expedition vessel. I don't think, anyway. I haven't seen one, but yeah. So I think, you know, for people that like touring and cultural experiences, they might get put off cruising, but you know, I think expedition cruising ticks a lot of boxes for people who want a great holiday.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to shut my windows because it's bin day. I really didn't think this through. I should have been like, oh, why did I?
Definitely have to leave this bit in there as well.
Yeah. Rubbish if you like.
Yeah. There's always, like I say, I was on a Zoom panel yesterday, and there was like another sort of reversing lorry. They just seem to know when I'm recording. Okay, so thanks for that, guys. I know also earlier one of our questions, we were discussing how all of your presentations sort of touch on how important the environment is. Well, I think it's important for cruising in general, but especially for expedition because of the delicate environments that you visit, and that's the current theme. Now, one of the issues of sustainable travel that gets increasingly raised in recent years has been over-tourism. And we know this is really more of a problem for mainstream cruising because particularly in the Mediterranean, etc. And cruising has often been seen as part of that problem. So with the areas that expedition cruising goes to and its increasing popularity, because I think we've got, Lucy, you've had a new ship, haven't you? You've got a couple more, I think 21. Luke, you've got some new ships. Jay, you know, I think you've all, you know, most of you've got like at least one or two like up your sleeves or something. Yeah. So how, with more ships, with more of like capacity in expedition cruising, how are you going to balance that to make sure that over tourism doesn't happen? I mean, is there some sort of collaboration on some level? Is it controlled purely by the restrictions of maritime authorities of areas such as the Antarctica and Galapagos? Because there are sort of, you know, I think there's permits you have to get for those destinations. So could you sort of explain some of that sort of area of expedition?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Amy. All of us work in conjunction with many governing bodies. So we have the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators in Antarctica, called IATO. In the Arctic, we have AECO, which is the Association of Arctic Expedition Operators. And really, it's a rule book that we all abide by and stipulates what we're able to do in these locations. One of the things, just for example, is it says that only 100 guests can land on ice at any one time in Antarctica. So you can't have a big mass of people going there. Another thing could be as simple as if I saw a guest making a snowman, we make sure that the snowman's patted back down before we leave. So everything has to be put back exactly as we find it. A lot of us also do lots of programs. We do beach cleanups and that sort of thing when we're out in these places. So we also try to make things better than what we found, how we found them. A big rule as well is that with expedition, no vessels can be more than 500 capacity. That's the cutoff. Above then, guests are not actually able to go out on shore excursions in these environments. So that's just a real brief summary of a few of the rules, but it's a massive thing that goes on behind the scenes, and we all take it really seriously, and it's so important to all of our brands. We have to get it right, and as I say, we want our guests to be able to go in 50 years time and it still look as it is now.
Yeah, I think that'd be important for guests to know, that they can, you know, cruise conscientiously really, and not also worry about, they can still feel that that they've got that sort of exclusive experience. So
I agree. Sorry,
Oh, no.
off the back of what Jay said, it's in our interest to look after these destinations as well as the guests, because we want to keep taking our guests back year on year. This is what we do as our business, so we need to look after these destinations. And just to quickly touch on a completely different destination, the Galapagos, we've obviously just launched a brand new ship out in the Galapagos Silver Origin.
you didn't mention that in the presentation, Luke. Naughty.
There was too much to try and get into a very quick presentation. But Silver Origin, in terms of over-tourism in the Galapagos, obviously I think over-tourism is an issue everywhere, and I think everyone is becoming more and more conscious of the impacts we have, whether it's getting on a flight to Spain or whether it's going on a cruise, where I think we're all becoming more and more aware of what goes on. But for the Galapagos and our new ship, we actually couldn't add capacity to the Galapagos, so we had to retire a ship and replace the capacity. So we actually retired Silver Galapagos, replaced her with Silver Origin, and that is heavily dictated by the national park. So they decide where you can go, what you can do at what time. So we follow them rules, very, very strict. And as I said, so it is managed in the areas where it needs to be managed by us and by the authorities we work with.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
And,
Something sorry, Amy, I'll just add. I know you touched on, it's Lucy, I know you touched on Coral having a couple of new ships. Just so that the customers are aware, I mean, a product like Coral is an Australian company. They build their ships in Australia. It's crewed by Australians. They source all their food. But I think that it's important to know these ships only have 72 people, and it is the areas they operate, Kimberley and the Great Barrier Reef, they're very, very restricted by the government. You know, there's very few ships in those areas, but also they are very aware of their environments. They give back to the marine life on the Great Barrier Reef. With something like the Kimberley, the one thing they do, which is important, is that they are looking after the people, the Aboriginal people. You know, the people. They formed relationships with the Aboriginals. You know, they have bonded with them, and people get exclusive experience to go and see how they live and how they work, and it gives back to those communities, which is similar to a lot of all the expedition companies. They're not just taking and guests, but they're giving back to local communities, you know, and making sure that, you know, those people have lives as well.
Excellent, thank you. Natalie, did you have anything you'd like to add to that, or?
Yeah, so it's so important that we look after the destinations, but also I think it's really important the way that we travel to these destinations. So for instance, at Hurtigruten, sustainability and travel is one of our top priorities as a company. And it's all, I think we're all, you know, of the same mind to look to ban single-use plastics on board, looking at new technology to ensure that travel becomes more sustainable. You know, all our expedition ships, we have 2 new ones that have hybrid power, which are part battery, and our brand new ship moored is biodiesel. So again, it's that reducing that CO2 emission into the environment overall in order to get to these destinations in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that leads on really nicely to my next question, because I know a lot of your companies have been around for, I'd say, at least 25, 30 years, Hurtigruten much longer. But we've obviously seen recently that expedition cruising's, increase exponentially in popularity. But at the same time, we've also seen those sort of technological advances that make cruising, more sustainable, but also more comfortable. I know we've sort of mentioned your Hurtigruten, you've mentioned and you've mentioned your your hybrid. So I think a lot of expedition cruise lines in particular have really invested in those sort of different technologies. So would you say that these new technologies have enabled the growth in expedition, or what else could be driving this growth? This is probably a bit of a chicken or egg sort of question, to be honest. So
I start with that one?
Yeah.
For me, I personally don't think it's the technologies. I think it's people. I think we live in a society now where everyone's been there, done that. The world has become much smaller and it's far more accessible. So it's now down to these bucket list destinations for people to travel to and to explore. They want to get away from the main tourist trap destinations, and where else can you go? You couldn't get any further away from civilization by going down to Antarctica or the Arctic. So I just think it's the fact that the world is so easily accessible now that people are looking for something different personally.
Okay, that's an excellent point. Like I said, it's a chicken or egg sort of question. Obviously, there's a demand for it because people have that wanderlust, and they've done the Med to death, the Baltics, all that. They want to try something new. But I suppose also the fact that we do have this technology means that they can do it in greater comfort. They can also, I think there is also an increased conscientiousness that we've discussed, that people, they want to enjoy the world, but they also want to make sure that they're protecting the world at the same time. They're not just, messing it up. So I think they can go to these uncharted destinations now, but do so conscientiously and safely and comfortably in a style that they've also sort of become more accustomed to. But yeah, does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah,
I would just think that also. Oh, come on, Matt.
Yeah, I just think I think every travel business now is looking to operate more sustainably. I think it's at the forefront, and it's what everybody should be doing. So I mean, Intrepid, we've been completely carbon neutral for over a decade. We carbon offset all of our trips. We're looking to double carbon offset our trips to Antarctica. As Nat mentioned, with no single-use plastic on board, only sustainably sourced seafood, and it's to give customers that experience that they want, but also making sure we protect the planet. And it has to be something that we all do. As we all mentioned, we work for travel companies. If there's no destinations to travel to in 50 years, there's not going to be any travel companies. So we all have a joint responsibility to protect our planet. And Intrepid, we've also when we carbon offset our trips, we purchase carbon credits. So we're supporting reforestation projects in Borneo, wind turbines in India. We've partnered with WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, not wrestling, but it's some people get confused when I mention the WWF, but it's definitely the World Wildlife Fund, and just really being committed to polar science and responsible projects. And I think that just gives customers that confidence. Okay, I want to travel there, but I also don't want to damage the planet, and I think it gives them that confidence that they can do both.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, another sort of growth we've seen is more and more solo travelers. I mean, we've always had a lot of solo travelers, but I think that is the other rising market, isn't it, that we've all been seeing. So as I mentioned, a lot of our clients are solo travelers, and Liz would like to know more about activities for solo passengers on board. There are quite a few of you on this panel, obviously. So could you perhaps raise your hands if you have cabins exclusively for solo travelers? Excellent.
Lucy does.
Or if you perhaps sometimes have special solo offers.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So what sort of activities, how do you make solo travelers feel comfortable on board? What's their onboard experience likely to be?
For Coral, and also we have a product, Pandor, which is in Asia, but on both those products, because the ships are so small, we offer the no single supplements. Coral do it on the Great Barrier Reef, and Pandor do it on all their sailings. But I don't think, because on Pandora, there are only between 10 and 48 people on a ship, and on Coral is only up to 72. The solo travelers it's like a little family, really. So there doesn't need to be any difference between a solo traveler and a twin, because people become one unit on such a small ship. You know, they go out on trips together, and they have the same interests. So there aren't any particular solo separate events, because they're so small that, you know, it is a family sort of experience. So, you know, I don't think, I can understand on the bigger ships where they would need it, but I think on the smaller ships, you know, there's more about they have common interests. You know, they like the wildlife, the scenery, the photography, you know, so they all share that common interest. So in fact, I don't think it's necessary to have any separate excursions, you know, particularly on the ships that are so small.
Yes, so that's a great answer. Thank you, Lucy. And I mean, we've all discussed how you know, one of the ingredients of expedition cruising is the smaller ships. We've got people who are, I think, like-minded passengers is a good way of putting it. And so I guess it'll be natural for people to sort of you know, discuss what they, you know, what they saw on an excursion, what they learned from a lecture. So I guess it'd be quite a natural, organic sort of thing. So there won't really be that distinction. So I think actually, I think we probably all agree that you know, that solo and expedition cruising sort of go quite well hand in hand. And I think dining is fairly open. You don't really have that rigid structure that I know a lot of mainstream cruising is moving away from that, but it's definitely less formal on an expedition ship. I think people are probably too knackered to put on their ball gowns. So, well, actually, I probably still would, but so I mean, and actually that does go into a couple of the questions that other clients had. I mean, I know we are in this strange world. COVID pretty much dominates almost all our waking thoughts. And it is something that people will be considering when making their travel plans. But so we do have some questions from clients who I guess they're worried about how COVID measures may affect the quality of the cruising experience that they're used to. For example, Hazel said that for her, the attraction of cruising is striking up conversations and making new friends in restaurants, bars, theatres or excursions. And she's worried that's not going to be as easy due to social distancing. Would you say it would have such a detrimental effect on getting to know fellow guests with social distancing in place? Or are we hoping that by the time, you know, cruising has got the green light for sure, would this be such an issue, social distancing? What COVID protocols do you think would have an impact?
Well, I think it's human nature to communicate with each other in all sorts of different ways. We're all learning, we're all adapting to the new COVID rules. So, you know, although we may be wearing masks, we can still communicate with each other. Again, they're small ships, so, you know, it's not as if you can't communicate with each other. You're all learning about the same things. If you're in the science centre, you're in the lectures, you know, when you're in the rig boat, you know, obviously it's restricted to the amount of people, but you are still with other people. You're never alone. So I just think it's us as humans just adapting to what the new normal is and going with the flow, really.
That's
I think
point about
I think
sorry.
I'm assuming we're all in the same boat here, excuse the pun, but we will be restricting obviously capacity at first when we first return to service. So we're not going to have ships sold at 100% occupancy, because we are going to have to allow for social distance. We call it physical distancing at Silversea. We don't like the idea of social distancing, so we want to allow the space for I guess the physical distance if they have to. But I think the answer, to be honest, nobody really knows, and until we get the green light, we start sailing. We're only going to sail, whilst we're all keen to get back on the water, we're only going to sail when it's safe to do so. So there isn't a major rush right now. But there will be some changes, and I think we're all going to do whatever we can to sort of limit the impact on that overall experience and to make sure that our guests are still getting what they pay for.
Yeah, and I think also there will just be perhaps, you know, additional hygiene measures in place. I mean, cruising's always been very on top of hygiene and sanitation. I think it would just be that, but on not steroids, but like just a few more, you know, a bit more deep cleaning, you know, in between than they normally do, etc. But so yeah, so hopefully COVID measures in place won't really impact on. I think that's also a balance that cruise lines are quite careful to strike. You know, they don't want their guests to have an inferior experience to what they would normally have. So I think that's the balance that I think we can all agree that cruise lines will be making, and that's what in a way we're sort of waiting for before the resumption of cruising. But
can I just add, Amy, that Coral actually have sailed towards the end of October. They started again purely in Australia. They are Australian. It is all Australian guests at the moment, but naturally they're all used to wearing the masks. They all have, I mean, the Cruising Association, CLIA, have worked with all the cruise lines to put together a policy. And I mean, there are very strict pre-boarding, you know, the temperatures they've got to take, and before they get on the ship, they have the temperature taken. Baggage is sanitized before it's taken on board. You know, yes, you wear a mask on board, except when you're at the dining table. And as you said, all the sanitizing and everything, and the social distancing. But customers on Coral, we've had a bit of feedback to say that, you know, they've actually, because they're used to wearing a mask when they're, you know, in their everyday life now, and they're used to the social distancing, they actually were quite happy. They just were pleased to get back on a ship and to be, you know, seeing things. So it didn't, the feedback we had was that it didn't detract from the sailing, because it's something they've just got used to now. So hopefully, I mean, you know, we get a vaccine, but at the moment, I mean, they've only had a couple of sailings, and touch wood, they've all been all right. But the customers have also been, you know, they feel that they're, you know, they're quite safe with the protocols that have been put in place.
Yeah. And you know, I think we've just mentioned about how we are getting used to wearing masks now, and you know, I think we've all enjoyed where we felt safe enough to do so, going back to a restaurant. And I think when you do go back to a restaurant, it actually feels so much better, because you've been stuck in your home for months, and have that sort of slice of normality. Okay, slightly not as normal as it was before, because you wouldn't have worn a mask going to and from your table. But I know when I've done that, you know, it's been like more exciting than it ever was before. And I mean, I'll probably cry with tears of joy when I'm like next walking up like that embarkation, like gangplank. I'm already like,
we'll be there with you, Amy. We'll be there with you.
Yeah, I think that's something that you know, keen to get back to the sea, but you know, when it's safe to do so. And I think that's definitely, it's nice to have some feedback from travellers who have sort of you know, experienced. And actually, I know Matt, I know again, this isn't cruising, I know it's been your sort of your tour base, but you have had and you yourself you've been away, haven't you? On retreats. And yeah, and you said that pretty much the same, as you know, it didn't detract, it was just so nice to sort of get back out there.
Yeah, so I was really lucky. So Intrepid have a new range of retreats, and I was really lucky to go to on the very first one in Greece. And all the customers in the group, again, just like what Lucy said, you know, the customers were just happy to be traveling. You know, they had to wear their mask whenever they were inside a museum or in, you know, going inside to a restaurant. But you know, it's everyone's just happy to be away and make the most of the experience, and it didn't take anything away. And with, you know, cruising and expedition cruising, we're probably not, you know, I know Coral have had some sailings, but the vast majority of ships probably aren't sailing until kind of into 2021. And there's going to be so many comprehensive risk assessments, safety measures put in place, because none of us are going to operate trips if they're not going to be safe and if they're not going to be enjoyable, because you know, that, you know, people aren't going to book. And I think it's really important to mention our flexible booking conditions as well. So, you know, most operators do have really good flexible booking conditions to give you that confidence to book a trip. And if it, you know, you can make amendments to your booking, and if the trip doesn't go ahead, you know, you are financially protected. So, you know, if you are thinking of booking a holiday or booking an expedition cruise, you know, I would really, you know, please look into the flexible booking conditions and get that confidence, because there'll be some great deals out there to travel.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that there has been a lot of flexibility from cruise lines throughout all of this. And I actually think for, you know, your own sake, you need to have something to look forward to, you know, and usually for most people, travel is something that they do look forward to, and something that I think we've all missed this year. We've been like, you know, I guess we've lost a year really, and you really sort of want to make up for it. So having that sort of once in a lifetime expedition cruise, you know, booking to look forward to, but also having the safety of a flexible booking, I guess is like, you know, the best of both worlds. So I think, you know, I think it's pretty clear that we've all missed cruising and we want to get back to it. We all miss travel. And so my final question really is kind of about destinations. I think traditionally expedition is very much a polar cruise, and that's still the case. And it's definitely one of those once in a lifetime bucket list voyages, you know, the Arctic, Antarctica. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? I mean, I guess this is like everyone on this panel would answer yes, like they do want to do it. But we've also seen that you guys tend to offer warmer water expeditions too, although perhaps less of a focus set for Lucy. Do you think that warmer expedition destinations will continue to grow and grow? For example, the Galapagos, although I know there's obviously restrictions on capacity that Luke mentioned, or other destinations. Are there some warmer water destinations that are still relatively untouched that could perhaps see more itineraries in the future? What do you guys think? What's in the pipeline?
I think this goes back to one of your earlier questions, Amy, with the common misperceptions, because a lot of people, again, automatically assume expedition is cold. They don't realise that there are the warm water out there. So yeah, Galapagos for us is one of our key drivers, one of our key sellers. Like Lucy, the Australian Kimberley is very much going up in popularity, and more people are heading down to Australia. The majority of Australians haven't even been to the Kimberley. It's that remote and it's that difficult to get to. So it's definitely another growing destination. And for us, we have lots of expeditions around Papua New Guinea and Asia as well. So I think warm water expedition is absolutely growing.
Excellent, thank you. Any other, you know, destinations that you think any of your other cruise lines are starting to focus on a bit more, that you offer that perhaps people wouldn't necessarily expect to do an adventure cruise on?
Certainly huge growth for us at Aurora. We're just in the process of launching our global program for 2022. Loads of new destinations. One of them is Raja Rampat in the West Papua Islands. I'd never heard of it. I checked it out, and most amazing paradise islands, and totally rich in marine biodiversity, untouched coral reef systems that are just pristine. I mean, it's very hard to find those now. A lot of them are bleached, as you know, throughout the world. And we even have itineraries closer to home. The world is a big place, but we even go to expedition cruise in west coast of Ireland. Wow. There are places out there that very few people have seen. In fact, it was only recently put in one of the Star Wars films, some of the locations out there. So you'd be amazed what's even on our doorstep that still needs discovering. So I think the opportunity as a market, it's huge and it's endless. So definitely a massive growth potential for all of us for the warmer climates.
Yeah. I mean, that's something you've touched on, Natalie, isn't it? Because you've got your ex-UK departures that you've discussed in your presentation. So yeah, I think sometimes I don't know whether expedition cruise is a state of mind, as you know. I think sometimes perhaps it's the way in which you just go to some of these, not necessarily totally remote, like you said. We do have some expedition voyages closer to home, but I think so that's some excellent points there. Thank you.
Amy, sorry, I'm always just an add-in. Just one product that Fred's River Cruise have is on Far Horizons, which does the Brahmaputra and does the backwaters of Kerala. Now there's only 2 ships on the Brahmaputra currently, very small, and it's an untouched area. It's full of wildlife, 850 bird species there, you know, the last of the tigers. There's only 110 tigers. It's got 4 game parks there. One of them, the Kaziranga, is a UNESCO heritage park. So, you know, again, if people like wildlife, this is a great opportunity, because there is hardly anybody on that river right now. And it is an expedition. Your mum loved it. I know, she did.
I'm actually we are going to have, like, mum and I are going to have like a little panel of our own, and she's going to share some of her favourite memories, including no doubt the Brahmaputra and Galapagos, which she did for Silversea. So that'd be something I think viewers might want to
so it's kind of, there are some untapped areas still. It is river, but it's expedition sort of river. So great opportunity for people to go there now, because, you know, there are only 2 ships on that river right now.
Excellent, thank you. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I think we've had some really great answers. It's been such a lovely conversation to have, and it's really, you know, I think you can tell that, you know, we're all really passionate about expedition cruise. There's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot to be that it offers, you know, people those sort of once in a lifetime experiences that that I think really I'm going to get emotional again, like I did. You know, I think I mentioned that we're all missing travel. We're missing that connection that we get through travel. That it's, you know, it is truly one of those things that, you know, they say money doesn't, you know, buy you happiness, but it does buy you travel, and that is actually one of the things that it can make, you know, your life richer. And I think, but also you can have that sort of communicative thing with you know, local communities. You know, it's not just about what you get from it, but also what the local communities and different destinations get as well. So hopefully we can have more of that in the future after this sort of year of distancing.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, can't wait to get exploring again. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Let's get sailing.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone. And I hope all our viewers enjoyed it as well. And anyway, so take care, everyone, and thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Happy
you.
sailing.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our Expedition Cruise panel as much as I did. This is certainly a fascinating and exciting area of cruise, and it's no wonder it's becoming increasingly popular. I think it's fantastic to see the choices and options that are available to us nowadays. And I truly believe that travel is a great connector, with Expedition Cruise no exception. I mean, we've seen how it brings guests together over shared experiences, how friendships can be struck, and how it can also help the local communities and the world around us, which I think is really important. And if you would like to go on an expedition cruise adventure or find out more, just give us a call on 01 234 326 758 or email sales@cruiseselect.co.uk, and we will be happy to help. So can't wait to hear from you. In the meantime, take care and keep safe.